Hey, beautiful. Welcome to day 2 of the Incoming Papers Challenge. I'm so excited that you're here, and I've seen so many amazing posts already about everything that you're doing as you are gathering your supplies for your action file. Well, today is day 2, so now we are building our file. That's what we're focusing on during this video really quickly, since it's day 2. So the whole point of the action file is that all of the file tabs are based on actions to take. So instead of filing papers based on what the paper is, you're filing papers based on what the next step is for that paper. This is how this is going to look. Within your action file, you have some core folder types that we will talk about. Actually, I can share that on the screen as well. So these are your core folder labels. They would include to do, to read, to enter, to scan, and to file. Now, you don't have to use every single one of these. For example, if you aren't going to scan any of your papers, then skip the to scan folder altogether. Or if you aren't going to be filing and you'll only scan, maybe you only use the to scan. You do what works best for you. These are the general core ones that I find most people do use in their files, though. Now, this is how this will work. Within your action file, you have your core folder types. As you see, I've got them here, and we'll just walk through them very quickly. So, for example, your to-do file folder, the action there is that you have to do something with that paper. So there's an actual action that you have to take that does not fit any of the other folders. Your to enter folder, this would be information that gets entered somewhere else. So that would be information such as a business card where maybe you have to enter the phone number or address somewhere else in your address book. Or if it's a password that you want to make sure to enter wherever you save your passwords. Anything that's just information, but the paper itself does not matter, is the information that you're keeping. Then we have to read. This is all you have to do is read it. So if the only thing that you have to do is read through it, you don't think that there's another action, then this is a great file folder to put magazines in. Maybe if you have an insurance policy that you want to read through the policy before it gets filed, anything that you don't think there's an action besides reading it. We have to scan. If you are going to scan your papers before you file them, this is a really handy file to have. That way you can scan your paper and you can decide, are you going to file it? Do you need to recycle it? What happens to the paper after that? But you've got everything that just needs to be scanned. There's no other action needed, goes in this folder. And to file. So to file would be anything where you do need to keep the paper itself. And you need to keep it in maybe your file cabinet, your Spark Life binder, wherever you need to keep that paper. But there's no other action needed. You've already read it. You've already entered any information that needs to go anywhere else. You've already scanned it if you want to scan. You've done all the actions. The last step would be you just need to file it. This is the folder that would go in. So those are your core folders that you will be using. And we will go even more in depth and answer some questions about the specifics for each of these folders later on this week once we have it placed and we're starting to use it. I'll go into specific examples. Feel free in this video, in the comment section, feel free to drop your questions about any specific papers or any folder that you have questions about so I can make sure to clarify it in that video for you as well. I usually also leave a blank folder within my action file. You can put it in the front or in the back, wherever works for you. This blank folder I use to keep my supplies. So you know how I said grab that pencil pouch to put some of your supplies in? I just throw that whole pouch right in that folder. So it's right there, whatever I need. I've got my pens, my highlighters, my stamps, whatever I need in order to process the papers that are in here. And it's all right next to my file. Now, those are the core folders. The problem is not everybody is the same though, are they? Along the way, I'm sure that each of you has something specific in your life that you'll need to adapt your action file for. So here are some of the other options that you might have for your action file. Now, some of these other folders could be added to your file based on if it's something that you really need. I do say with your file, though, try to keep 10 or fewer choices for folders. So you don't want more than 10 files to choose from. The fewer, the better. If you can make it just 5 or 6, that's going to be optimal. But if you can get it down to 10 or fewer, then that's the best. And the reason why we do this, actually, before I go in depth into those, the reason why we do this is our brain can make a decision between a couple of choices quickly. But when you give it too many choices, that's when it becomes really hard. So for example, Baskin Robbins. If I were to ask you, hey, do you want some ice cream? Would you like mint chocolate chip, vanilla, chocolate, or pistachio? I'm pretty sure in your brain you can come up with your answer very quickly as to what flavor you want. Now, if you head to Baskin Robbins and they've got 52 flavors or however many they have now, when you're looking at a list of 52 flavors, even though it's ice cream and you know that you want ice cream, it's going to take you a while to figure out what in the world you want because the choices are so many. It's the same way with our papers. If we have too many choices, that's when our brain kind of shuts down. If you're busy, you're going to put it aside on a pile or procrastinate on it and say you'll do it later. When it's 10 or fewer choices between the files that it can go in, once you're used to making those decisions, then you aren't going to say, I'll do it later. You're simply going to hop in and do it really quickly right then with no problem. So that's why we want to limit these files. Now, I will go really in depth about how papers can move between these files and how they get out of the file system and into your permanent files or shredder or wherever. We're going to go much more in depth into how all of this flows with your other paper systems later on in the week. I believe on, I want to say Thursday. We will talk really in depth about that because, of course, not all of your papers are going to stay in this file forever. They will hop between file folders until they exit the system into another system or out of your life. But having those few choices to start with means that you won't procrastinate, you won't get overwhelmed, and all of your papers will be captured so you won't lose those important things or forget about them. Now, on Friday, we're also going to talk about how to make this stick, how to make sure that those really important papers don't get forgotten, lost in your to-do file, because it can be really scary. So stick with me, but we're breaking this down one small step at a time. Now, some of the other file folders that you might find really useful in your action file would include to pay if you have things that you still pay by hand or that you want to double check before you pay them. And if you have a large enough amount of these coming in each month, to pay might be a really good action file for you. The action of that file is simply anything that you have to pay can go right in that file. Something like to mom is really good, or to another person if there's more than one person in the house and you need to remember to give it to them. Or I like to use to mom if you have school-aged kids or anybody who needs to pass you papers. All of those papers can simply go in that file for you, and then you will be able to review them and put them in the files that you want them to be in. This is really great if you have kids. To shred, if you're not able to put your file or your papers that you don't need anymore in a shredder immediately, if you don't have a shredder right by you, then to shred or to burn, if you prefer to burn your papers instead of shred them, however you need to destroy those papers, that can be a good file folder. I prefer having the shredder right next to it so it does not become a task to do later, but if you can't, this is a good one. To call is a really good one if you do have a lot of calls, or if you don't want your calls to be mixed in with your regular to-dos. Then if you have enough of them, that's a great folder to add. To research is a good one if you're working on maybe a major project, or if you like to research a bunch of different things, then a to research folder is a good one. Your only action that you need, the first action with that paper, is to research it. To try or to use, those are really, really good for recipes or coupons or craft ideas. anything that you want to try out or use it soon can go in that folder so you can keep track of it and make sure that you actually try it in a reasonable amount of time. You can also add one to add to your Spark Life Binder. If you're using the Spark Life Binder to manage your important papers or another similar binder system, having one folder that makes sure that you can enter that information into that Spark Life Binder before you finalize wherever that paper goes, that can be a really helpful folder to have. And then you can just sit down with your Spark Life Binder, open up your file from the action file, and get everything entered right then. And then if you have any special projects, maybe there's a medical condition that you're dealing with that has a lot of incoming papers, or medical bills that you have to then follow up with insurance companies. Maybe you have renovations on your home. Whatever it is, it's okay to have one, maybe two folders for special projects, but these need to be folders for just the active papers for that special project. It should be a temporary project or a project where those papers come in and out frequently. We don't want this to become a filing cabinet because that's not the purpose of the action file. The action file are papers that have an action that are going to happen with that paper. So one, maybe two special projects are fine, but try to be really, really limited. And then as soon as that project ends, make sure to remove that file folder because we want fewer is better, like I mentioned. So we talked about our supplies. We have the container and we have all of those file folders. Those optional supplies, such as the stapler, we have, if you want a scanned stamp to mark things that are scanned, Post-it notes, anything like that, that's where you can pop them right into that pencil pouch in one of the folders of your action file, or you could put a little bin next to your action file, somehow keep them with the file. If you have one of the cute little files with the pockets on them, this is a great place to be able to keep some of those optional supplies. And if you wanted to label your action file, I do love using a label maker for anything that I'm going to be referencing frequently, anything that I'm not going to be changing the names of very often, or anything that somebody else will be using, because having a printed label usually just makes our brain able to identify the folder that we need and read it really quickly and make those decisions versus handwritten, especially if the handwriting is not your own. So if you want your family to use the system, using a label maker for those file tabs is very, very helpful. So that is how you can put together your action file. Once you put together your action file, I would love to see a picture of what you did in your post on Facebook. Post the photo, but it should look pretty much like this. You should have only a few folders in it. They should all be actions, and we're going to practice using this later this week and go really in depth and answer all of your questions. I did have a couple of questions that came in since the last live that we had. I had one person asked if you can use a file drawer or a file cabinet instead of a standalone bin or a wall hanging bin. And I prefer not to. The whole goal of the action file is to have it in your walking path. We'll talk tomorrow about where to place it so that it's going to be the most convenient, but we want it in the walking path. So it's super easy for us to just drop things into. If it's in another room, if it's in a drawer that we have to open, if there's a lid on it, that all makes it a lot more difficult. As far as what types of file tabs I like, I heard that question. I prefer to use the smaller ones just so I can see more of the categories. If you did want to use like I think it's a 2-inch or 3-inch or 4, I think these are 2-inch. I think it's the 4-inch, the 3 or 4-inch tabs. You can do that if you prefer. I just don't do that because then it's a little bit harder to get the quick glance of all of my file folders. But there's no wrong answer with this. Like I mentioned, make this your own. I want this to work with your personality type. That's what this is all about. This is your action file. And just dive in, try it out. I know it sounds really scary, but you can absolutely do this. I don't know how many times I've heard people who set up their action file and they're a little nervous about using it, so they put off starting it. But then when they finally do commit to trying it out, I get so many emails about how amazing it is for them and how much they love it. You just need to take that first step and really dip your toe in and try it out for yourself. Sound good? I will see you over in the Facebook group. Make sure that you post your photo of your built file. I would love to see what your action file looks like. Just make it a post in the Facebook group or post your photo in the comments. Remember, it's a private group, so only people that have been approved to be in are in the group, and it's a judgment-free place to encourage each other and celebrate each other. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow for a live video at 6 p.m. Eastern time. Remember, adjust the time zone for your own. But 6 p.m. Eastern time, we're talking about where to place your action file in your home and what to keep around it, what the best way is to make sure that that's as easy as possible for you. So that will be live tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern, and the link will be in the units section of that Facebook group for the Home Challenges Facebook group. And if you're getting the emails, if you're registered for the challenge, you will also receive an email with that link. I hope to see you tomorrow live. Post your questions in the comments to this video, and I'm so happy that you're here. This is going to be an amazing week. One small, tiny, doable step at a time, and you're going to have a system that you absolutely love. I love you so much, and I'm so glad that you're here. I'll talk to you very, very soon.